Rolling Tin Fist.
Hello, men. This is the third and last part of the series on foreign women. If you haven't listened to the first and second installments, please do that to get some more context. Quick recap. The first installment was to talk about the good things about foreign women, women that are not native to your western part of the world, and that's the context. Second segment was to talk about the bad things about having long-term or marital relationships with these women. This segment will talk about the ugly, okay? And the ugly in that how things can really get bad if you do decide to have long-term or particularly marry foreign women. And part of this is based on my personal experience of men that I've known. One of the things that, happened to me, and this is on the benign end, is that I was, even with my deep experience in my wife's culture, speaking the language, being there from there ancestrally, I still felt trapped to some of the blinders that we men have, particularly when we're not red pill, as was my state at the time. There's an expectation that you help with family when you marry a foreign woman, because they're usually coming from a lesser economic social strata than you are as the Western man. So there's an expectation in those cultures that because you are the man, because it is a patriarchy, and the man is seen as the provider of all, there's going to be a certain expectation that you do some things to help out. Again, it's never going to be, if the woman has any sort of class and upbringing, it's not going to be a beating over the head with a stick. Oh, you must. It's just kind of be like, hey, you know what? My mom, she's been struggling with her health in hospitals. I was wondering if we could kind of help her. I mean, we being you, but if we could kind of help her out. And so it'll be that way. I mean, it'll be real smooth if the woman has any sort of class. In my situation, it was some help paying, I think it was the down payment on a place for a mortgage over there, where my wife's from. And so I was like, okay. I mean, I wasn't crazy about it, but I knew it was something that, provided it was legit, and I'll get to that in a second, it would be a really good way to give her, not only her mom, a solid foundation, but also to help her family out at large, so we wouldn't have to be continually, paying for things down the line. So that was the kind of the mindset I went towards doing that. My mistake was not, first of all, checking the story and making sure there was transparency. Long story short, I sent some $2,500 and it just disappeared into thin air. Apparently she got, my mother-in-law got swindled by the realtor and this, that, and the third. And long story short, the place that was supposedly hers that she gave money to buy ended up to be owned by somebody else, and therefore she could never get title, and the dude who took the money disappeared. By the way, where my wife is from, very common practice. It happens all the time. People try to sell houses that aren't even theirs. So the context, the plausibility of the story is quite true, but the actual details of what happened once the money left my hands to this day isn't clear and never got clear. And because both my wife are here, it's much harder to get that story. And so basically, I was out $2,500 that I rather would have kept in my bank account. And so that's just one example. Another example I mentioned in the prior segment of the video is that a friend of mine, he had gone on vacation to Mexico, met a foreign woman, very lovely, pretty much had a shotgun wedding, came back to the States. He's like, look, I'm going to get married. I'm in love. I'm like, don't do it. He's like, I want to do it. I'm in love. At the time he was older than me. He was like, look, I'm 32, I want to settle down. I want to have kids. I'm like, okay, because I can understand that. And so I helped him with the paperwork. And I explained to him, I said, listen, you're basically footing the bill for her if she decides she doesn't want to do this. She decides she wants to go back to Mexico. She decides she doesn't want to work, whatever. You basically, according to the U.S. government, you complete this. You include what is called an affidavit of support, meaning you will be responsible financially if for some reason your bride decides she isn't going to work, but instead finds her way on public assistance. You, as the sponsor, the Western man, in this case American, initiating this request to have your foreign woman be a permanent resident, you are on the hook, right? She's like, yeah, sure. So he did it, and I had to do the same thing when I got married. I had to fill an affidavit of support. And so he did it. He got married. She came over here. And, for the first 3 months, sweetness and light. I mean, beautiful. I mean, lovely woman. She did all the things I talked about in the first installment, had his food ready, took care of him, brought food to work, was just, did his laundry. But you know what happens? Enough time here. And I'll put a link in the description to a great skit by Eddie Murphy from his series comedy show Raw that talks about this exactly. It's about Umfufu. So basically, his Umfufu, he brought her here, okay, from where she was cool, where she had proper home training, brought her to America, and then she basically lost her mind because she was listening to her fellow American at chicas, putting stuff in her head, and then she got, hey, I can, use hypergamy. I can do better. And so what happened is that, unfortunately, they got into her head in a really short period of time, and she decided to basically lose my friend and hook up with somebody else she met at the gym, right? But then she found out that, she was still technically tied to my boy, right? And basically until that process finished and she got her permanent residency, she couldn't really move up even in her own right? And so she basically came back with a tail through her legs, asking, my boy if she could come back in the house and all this sob story. And it was a train wreck. It was just a train wreck. And I don't remember how it turned out, but basically it was about 6 months to a year of just hell, him trying to, because on one hand he still cared for her, and she was just more naive than anything. I mean, she wasn't really evil, just really naive and dumb and listened to the wrong people. So it was just a whole mess for him. His job was shaky. It affected his health, his finances, and it was just a mess. And they weren't happy past that. And so that's what can happen, if you bring a foreign woman back, particularly if you get married. They'll get Americanized or Westernized real fast, and that can just wreak havoc on your life. Now, the third anecdote I'm going to give you is something that I just found out. I had heard of rumors about this, but this is the real deal. And this is the most sinister I have come across. So in this case, and this is someone that I have personal knowledge of, in this case, the foreign woman had a kid from some baby daddy somewhere. She came to the U.S. on a visitor's visa, which is typical, and they just kind of overstay their welcome. So they're here essentially legally. And so what they do, that single mom, foreign mom, what she'll do is try to find a Westerner. And depending on where she is generationally, she still has the looks. She might just go for a white knight or a mangina and, put it on him and convince him to just say, I do. However, she's at the wall, past the wall, or just her sexual marketplace value isn't as high, then she's especially if she's in survival mode. So what she'll do, this is the hustle. She will find an American that has had a felony record. So for some reason, he's had some kind of running with the law. He's been charged, and he's done his time. Maybe he's on a parole. And so they will hook up with that dude, right? Now, they may not even live in the house. They will just sometimes do something on paper. Consideration will be exchanged, maybe money, whatever. But on paper, they're married. And so after time, what the woman will do is set up a scenario whereas she can file to be a resident leading to citizenship that she was battered by her husband. There's actually a status you can use for permanent residency that is based on basically being a battered spouse, right? And you can actually do that. And so this is what this woman did. She basically hooked up with this dude who had done time. So he had a record. And then, again, time went, 6 months later, went to file this status for permanent residency on the basis of this individual having battered her. And you guys know the government, they're going to look into this stuff. But what makes it work is that if she can just show that she's been victimized in any way, either her or her child, right? So she can just say, hey, he molested my child, right? The mere fact that this man had a record gave her plausible deniability. The mere fact, right? And so that's something, again, it's very real to be aware of, that this is how ugly it can get if you marry a foreign woman. Now, I know that people actually say, well, this can happen with any woman. Yes, it can. The difference is with a foreign woman, right? that is not from your Western place in life, it's 10x in terms of degree of difficulty because you just don't have the native knowledge that woman does, right? You just don't. It's not a game you're used to. It's not an area you're used to. So that's what makes it more difficult. So while there may be the rewards of, better culture, better, more traditional values, more attractiveness, there's also the flip side is that you're at a disadvantage because of what you don't know about not only the woman, but the culture, right? And so that's something to keep in mind. So that's it for the series. Again, if you have any questions, anything I've covered from any of this series, something you'd like me to answer, something that wasn't clear, definitely let me know, and I'll try to answer it. Take care.